up, cannabis community, but more importantly, hello state legislators. My name's Cannabess, and today I want to talk to you guys about two pieces of legislation you're set to vote on tomorrow. I believe these pieces of legislation will be detrimental to the cannabis community. I think it will hinder our product offerings, hurt small to medium-sized businesses, kill jobs, and worst of all, concentrate this industry into the hands of a corporate few. So speaking of concentrates, let's start out with a dab because that's the first thing we're going to be talking about now. Also, I planned to do this video with B-roll and really professional, and the law kept changing and it made it really hard for me to get everything put out, so I'm really just gonna kind of wing it. Freedom to dab! Wow, doing the news after a dab, that's gonna be wild. This bill pertains to the potency of marijuana extracts. Get this, under this legislation, the industry will be capped at 10% THC for recreational concentrates. Now, the legislation goes on to cite that high potency cannabis leads to psychosis. The state says that people who use cannabis are 4 times as likely to have psychosis. That number, according to the study they cite, is 5 times if you're located in London, 9 times if you're in Amsterdam. Okay. Let's get one thing straight. First of all, we're not in Amsterdam. We're not in London. London actually is still illegal, so I'm not sure why you're looking at an illicit market for comparisons. You might not even know what you're smoking. Next, it's important to note that association is not causation. There's actually something called the reverse causation hypothesis that theorizes people with psychosis tend to seek out cannabis as opposed to the other way around. Also, there's a 2016 study that cites that it's a certain risk gene that people with psychosis have that tends to cause them to seek out cannabis. It's not just like everybody that smokes weed, then goes and turns to cannabis. So sorry state, your argument's null and void. The legislature's solution to this problem is to limit extract sales to only medical retailers. Now, this is problematic, especially when you start to look at Washington State's requirements to get a medical marijuana endorsement. You have to have things like cancer, HIV, hepatitis C, chronic renal failure, PTSD. It's important to note that a qualifying condition does not count for depression, bipolar, or anxiety, so apparently the state would rather have you taking pharmaceuticals instead. One other thing, the most obvious flaw with this legislation is that Washingtonians shouldn't be forced to get on another government list to voluntarily consume a plant, especially when that list impacts, quite frankly, your Second Amendment rights. And if people are gonna be like, oh, but it's federal, don't come at me with that, shall not be infringed, end of discussion. Also, I think it's important to note that I find it, quite frankly, ironic so many Democrats support this bill because they like to champion my body, my choice. I think this is a great example of bodily autonomy. So, we can't just preach it when it pertains to abortion. My body, my choice. Freedom to dab, freedom to consume a plant. Let's take one more dab, because why not? Zing, a nice zippy sativa to help us digest all this information. I'd like the state to know, if you guys ban cannabis concentrates, you're going to be hurting this small farm in Winthrop, Washington, amongst many others. I believe concentrates make up 35% of the Washington rec market. So thanks state for being a total job killer. Wow. One thing I forgot to include to the senators who are sponsoring this bill, who somehow think that cannabis leads to psychosis, do you want to know what I do after taking a dab? I run, I lift weights, I clean my house, I spend time with family and friends, I like to go hiking, and most importantly, I like to download legislative documents like these to learn how my very rights, quite frankly, are being infringed on by the people designed to protect them. We're just over here breaking stereotypes, dab after dab. SB 6393 pertains to cannabis industry workplace standards. It basically puts requirements in place for producers, processors, retailers, and transportation companies to renew their business license annually. Now, as if this industry isn't taxed and regulated enough as it is, the Washington State politicians and I guess the LCB want to enact a point system. In order to renew your business license, you're going to have to meet a series of points to do so. I'm going to just quickly read off some of these that we've got. You have to acquire 100 points. These points include 20 points for providing a living wage, with that considered at least 150% of the income, 20 points for a workplace health and safety plan. This also must include monthly meetings between staff. Then you have to do 20 points to offer healthcare coverage, 20 points to offer employee-funded retirement benefits, 20 points to establish a code of conduct that includes sexual harassment prevention, 20 points to establish and administer a community engagement program, 20 points to establish a social equity program. However, this subsection also must include a 2,500-word narrative that establishes goals on diversity in ownership, management, employment, and contracting, which ensues diversity of participants. And then the two big ones at the end, 40 points for a labor and peace agreement. For those of you who don't know, a labor and peace agreement is an agreement between an employer and a labor union, and basically they agree to waive certain rights under federal law in regard to workplace unionizing, organizing activity. Lastly, is 60 points for a collective bargaining agreement. Collective bargaining is basically a process between employers and employees regarding wages, benefits, etc. Basically, in order for companies to now renew their business licenses under this law, companies will either have to unionize or jump through a slew of hoops to meet these demands. But what I oppose most about this legislation is government's use of force. Government is basically telling businesses, you are better off out of business than being able to provide a job to someone without being able to meet these 100-point demands. Moreover, the government is telling you, the cannabis employee, you're better off unemployed than working voluntarily for a company who can provide you some of these things, none of these things, or maybe all of these things. Voluntary interaction between two beings. But once government gets involved and sets mandates, it makes it harder to get into the industry. And that hurts not just, small to medium-sized businesses, it hurts minority, women, LGBTQ, immigrant, and small businesses. It hurts everybody. All right, so as of 2018, only 6% of private sector jobs were unionized. So if SB 6393 is so great, why don't we force it on all Washington companies? Just kidding, we should not do that. But seriously though, why should the cannabis industry have higher requirements for their occupational licensing? Okay, I know what some of you guys are thinking. Oh good, if companies can't provide these things, they shouldn't be in business. I think we need to keep in mind the unintended consequences of government intervention. I mean, California's gig worker economy law is a great example of that. AB 5 was put in place to protect workers like freelancers, and instead it ended up totally killing their jobs. I'm so high. Controlled labor markets increase unemployment and decrease job freedom. Case in point, look at France. They have some of the strictest job laws in the European Union, and they have unemployment currently at 8.6%. Italy's at 10.2, Greece is around 16, and Spain I think is at 14. So the United States is currently at 3.5%. And as for those Nordic countries, everybody loves to quote the Nordic countries. Those countries, they have very low unemployment. They also have kind of controlled markets, but also they have no minimum wage laws. So in summation, SB 6393 increases the barrier to entry in the cannabis community. I believe it makes it harder for everybody, minorities, women, LGBTQ, immigrants, small run businesses to grow and succeed. If anything, if we're gonna incentivize businesses to provide these things, why aren't we looking at giving them tax breaks for voluntarily participating? But I think it's awful to restrict companies because they cannot financially provide certain things to their employees. We need to look at things like 280E. Companies don't get to write off things like healthcare because cannabis is federally illegal. So at the end, it'll leave it in the hands of big business who can afford to do these things. Oh yes. Wait, we're gonna take another dab, and then I'm gonna talk to you guys. This is what makes this whole, because people are like, we love unions. Like, who doesn't love unions? Like, and workers' rights and fair pay and all those things. It's like everybody wants that, right? Like, you want to pay your employees well, you want to be able to pay them benefits. This is what makes it such a scam. I can't even believe I forgot this. Okay, so everyone wants to talk about like freedom and helping the employers. Okay, you're going to force all of these cannabis companies to join a union in order to participate. I can't even believe I almost forgot this part. It's the most important part. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Here's the biggest scam about SB 6393, that there's only one union you can join to be part of it. So now not only are you most likely semi-forced into joining a union if you're a cannabis company, now you only have one to choose from. So it's no wonder that the unions are pushing this bill. SB 6332 and SB 6393, I believe, are two bills that will be very, very detrimental to Washington State's cannabis industry. I think that they will decrease product offerings, they will hurt small to medium-sized businesses, they will kill jobs, and then kind of concentrate this industry into the power of a select few big businesses and, quite frankly, a single union. It's not going to increase freedom. It's not going to support small businesses. It's not going to be incentivizing and good for companies. So what do we need? Next steps. I've linked to these bills below, so definitely go, comment, call, email, make your voice heard. Let these politicians know. Don't obviously limit our concentrates at 10% THC, and also we want to advocate for voluntary change in the cannabis industry. We want to incentivize businesses to be providing these things, so give them tax rebates. We want to incentivize businesses, give them tax rebates for providing these things on a voluntary basis. Yes, take me from my dad. My hometown girl, I got if you pass SB 6332, companies like this, Lazy Bee, the family-owned sun-grown farm in Winthrop, Washington, they won't be able to produce products like this. You are denying people the freedom to dab. You are limiting tax revenue for your own state. Literally, you sell alcohol that can kill people if they drink enough of it. This is not the same with concentrates. Don't tread on weed. Alright, if you like this video, give it a like, give it a thumbs up. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to see more, definitely make sure to subscribe, follow, whatever. Thanks so much for watching. Get out there and now go and make your voice heard. Bye!